Hi, welcome to my commentary for my TAS speedrun of IGI. Um, so there's two things I need to explain. There's what a TAS is and what IGI is. You don't actually need to know anything about this game. I'll try to explain what you need to know as it happens. As for what a TAS is, look it up, the Tool Assisted Speedrun. Right now this doesn't look like a TAS, it looks more or less just like playing the game. There's some frame perfect inputs here and there, but nothing complicated. I'll briefly talk about what speedrunning this game is like, not necessarily tassing it. There's a frame perfect jump right there, but there's not a lot of optimization you can do to the movement mechanics in this game. There's a little bit, later on especially, but right now this is mostly just walking forward. The real optimization comes from upgrading things at the right time, basically. It's kind of an RPG. There's some stuff you can upgrade there in the bottom corner. And because I don't normally speedrun this game, I don't speedrun games. This is my first speedrun and it's a TAS. I had to look up a reference. So I just found the best run I could find, which is by Remar, the guy who actually made the game, also speedran the game. So I downloaded that VOD and used that as reference for knowing when to upgrade things. And there's Sector 1 already complete. So there's 5 sectors in this game that get progressively longer, more or less. So theoretically we're a tenth of the way through. Yeah, so there you can tell it's definitely a TAS. That crack happened very quickly. Also, I've just picked up what's called the Resonance Detonator. It's now the 3rd weapon I have. It's not really a weapon, it's actually a kick. So it's a weapon that does the same thing as a kick, but instantly and in all directions, and it doesn't slow me down. And it does take a while to switch to the weapon. Use it again. So this is a non-pacifist run, and which means I'm allowed to do as much killing as I want. It's quite slow, so I don't know, not much happens. I usually just walk past enemies, but I can do as much as I want. Technically, so there's 2 ways. Pacifist means 2 different things in the context of this game. There's a pacifist playthrough, which means 50 or fewer kills in the game in general, and there's a pacifist speedrun, which means 0 kills. Or maybe 1, I'm not sure. But, so here's a little bit of an interesting thing. I'm going to grab a checkpoint there, and I'm going to skip this upgrade because it has a chance of giving me something useless. And then I'm going to grab this and die. And then that's a skip. That's pretty cool. It's not really a skip. It kind of is a skip. And it's cool. 1 armor left right there. That was a bit lucky. I jump on top of that to skip the dialogue there. It doesn't really do anything, and in fact, I think on later upgrades of that type, I just walk into them, but whatever. That was a slight mistake there. I forgot to jump out of that climb animation. So anyway, this is the most obvious skip in the game. Boom. That's pretty cool. This is a little bit less obvious. I've cracked the Buster Gun, I believe. I'll use that in the next sector. And I take a slightly longer route right here to make this fall a lot shorter. So that blue stuff laying on the ground is what gives me level ups, clearly. You get upgrade, it's called Nano, and it's mostly just found laying on the ground. I'll skip a cutscene there. And you get enough Nano, and you level up. You level up, you get a point, you spend it on upgrades. So what I've done there is I've agreed to a truce with the TAS because I'm technically a pacifist. I haven't killed that much. I think I'm at 0 kills at this point. I'm not sure. But they're like, well, you seem nice enough. Let's do... I've upgraded attack to level 4 in the middle of the truce, which is kind of funny. But enemies... There are a lot of enemies that suddenly don't exist, and they will not shoot at me anymore, clearly. This does not last very long. In fact, I actually break the truce to make something a little faster later on in this sector. This is actually super simple. I believe I did a little bit of that walking through at full speed because I didn't have the patience to task that frame by frame. There's nothing to optimize there, it's just walking forward. And this run took me, so this is a 26-minute run or something, and it took me about 6 to 12 hours I'm not sure exactly. I should know that in more detail than I do, but it took a while. I used over, I think, 2,600 rewinds, basically. So you may have noticed me jumping down ledges instead of just walking off them. That's because I get a bunch of extra vertical speed. Horizontal speed and vertical speed are entirely separate. So I can jump down ledges. Those jumps didn't mean anything. So what I'm going to do, I click through that soldier right there to get a bunch of, to break the truce. And the benefit of that is it changes the story in this boss fight. It actually lets the boss fight happen, because if you have a truce, the boss fight doesn't happen. So this is a bit one-sided. I can't skip this dialogue, so I just have to spam through it. And speaking of spam, it's a very one-sided fight. Most of the fights in this game are very one-sided, with, I think, the exception of Iosa and Tor in sectors 9 and the last sector. On to sector 4. So, no longer truce, they all shoot at me. So I'm going to do something a little bit interesting here. I'm going to do what's called a nanofield reboot. I'm going to crouch, enter a command, and destroy my own nanofield, or reboot my own nanofield, and that resets my upgrades. And the benefit of that is I can... It's basically a respec. I can put everything into strength there in order to break through that door. And I had to manipulate that turret a little bit because it was frustrating. Here's the other advantage of upgrading strength. I can do that skip as well. So I've now skipped maybe half the sector, maybe like a third of it or so in total. That rocket barely misses me. So enemy randomness in this game is a real thing, and I can't really manipulate that in the TAS because of how randomness in computers works. If something random happens and I undo time and cause the random thing to happen again, it'll happen the same way if it happens at the same time. So if I want something random to happen differently, I have to cause it to happen in a different time. And sometimes that's just not optimal. There are several different ways of doing that room. The other one is grabbing the shredder and jumping off of it and maintaining your speed a little bit. But I didn't do it. Here I'm going to be a bit rude, not for no reason, but I'm going to do another nanofield reboot, and I don't want that scout messing with me. I should mention something real quick about how rewinding time works in this. The program that I use is called Hourglass, and it has a bit of a limitation. I can't undo things in a way that's particularly useful. So I can't change things in the middle of this run. I can only undo... I have a backspace, but I don't have a skip to the middle of the paragraph and make a change. So if there are any mistakes, then I just have to live with them if I don't immediately catch them. This is a bit cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cause a dialogue to pop up, and that's going to freeze time. And you see the little X next to the time on the left. But stuff is still happening, which is, I don't know, a little bit weird. But time is based off in-game time, so that's okay, I guess. I have to duck under that, otherwise the knockback would be too much and I would fall down. I would get knocked back. So this is Sector 5, by the way. Sector 5 is, having watched this back, is home to the worst mistakes in this run. Why I bring up the mistakes thing right now. So I'm going to clip that crate and that roof a little bit, and I didn't catch it when it happened. Those are minor, and there's another minor one later, but I get pretty unlucky with stuff. You'll see. I'll explain it. Yes, the enemies are shooting at each other. They prioritize shooting at each other over me. To a degree, it's complicated. There's two different alien races involved. Up there that I didn't notice. It might have actually been intentional, I don't remember. More fighting. It's important for the story, I guess. I've skipped most of the story, of course, is the TAS. So I've cracked myself a spread rocket. And I will do another super cool skip with the MPFB that I just picked up. The MPFB is an important weapon because it deals the most knockback to me. And knockback is super important when your run speed is limited. And other things. So here's the mistake. So I didn't have enough, I'm not quite high enough level. And there we go, I pick up enough nano to level up. And I needed that level to get a little bit of crack. So I could have taken a little bit less of a little bit of a detour earlier on and gotten more nano. But I didn't know that I was running low, so. So I've selected the MPFB again. Speaking of knockback, that's pretty cool. I knocked myself into the end trigger there. So I've selected the nuke. And this is the second boss fight in the game, and this will be just about as one-sided. And it's already over. A little bit of a dance for style there. He's very surprised that I picked up that nuke. I try to select the resonance detonator to skip kicking down that door, but I don't do it early enough, so whatever. And this here is why it's important to reference an actual speedrun by a human who knows the game better than I do, because it wouldn't have occurred to me to do that, and that's pretty cool. Grabbing that checkpoint is important, because if it's a checkpoint, I'm probably going to be killing myself. Because they're useful for that in speedruns. So here I actually have to take a little bit of damage there, and I've checked the damage so I don't fall down. The reason I have to is because I'm killing myself a little faster. You have to wait for that dialogue that long, by the way. You can't skip it earlier, anyway. This guy is not a threat. A lot of this is just walking around, nothing interesting is happening. Although something interesting is about to happen, so I do, I'm gonna wait in this dialogue for a bit, and that's because I'm waiting for the resonance detonator to become equipped. And there's a way of optimizing that further, but I didn't know about it at the time. Basically being able to resonance detonator both of those doors instead of just one. On to Sector 8, or sorry, Sector 7. Fire a rocket just so he doesn't bug me. And this is the first instance of what's called a beast, Kamada beast. They are frustrating, so instead of dealing with them, I just walk into them and tuck the damage. The AI decides to be nice enough to let me go by. Onto the armory. So I actually created a save state here and made a mistake. I don't remember what the mistake was, but I do that later in the sector, so I undid time back to here to pick up more MPFB ammo. And I think I made a mistake at this point. So I know at some point I don't upgrade Assimilate when I should have. Assimilate gives me more ammo and reserve, and here's Vatilika, the truce creator from Sector 3. So in a bit I won't have enough ammo, and I don't realize that's a problem until Sector 9. That was a pretty cool jump in my opinion. So here's another beast. The AI decides to be mean and jump up here, so I just have to deal with it. This is pretty obvious. This is just me killing myself to get back to the checkpoint. This next room is kind of filled with quite a few enemies, and they are frustrating, so I had to do this a few times. I jump on top of that overload in order to give myself a different upgrade, because I hit it at a different time and the randomness hits differently. That's a nuke, and I fired it on the earliest frame that's possible to destroy that Kamado weapon. There's a story in this game. It's decent. I'm skipping all of it, of course. And back onto the ground. Destroy that ceiling lamp for some reason. Okay. And then do another skip there with the nuke, blowing myself off across that ledge. And I don't pick up that MPFB ammo on the ground either. I pick up half of it, but it would have been more useful to have more. So this is the Proxima boss fight. Proxima is a bit annoying, but it goes by pretty quickly. I'm going to stand as close to this electro pad as possible. If I go one frame further, I would get damaged by it. And then I just have to wait for the AI to do enough. It does enough orders, and I can upgrade, or I can activate that terminal on the first frame possible. And that terminal is already ended. The terminals reactivate the electric pads, and they do a lot more damage than my weapons can do. That's a little bit of an exploit there, and I did it again. I did it once and I'll do it again. If I fire those spreader rockets at the right time, the explosion actually appears on the other side of Proxima for whatever reason. On to Sector 8. 8 out of 10 done. Well, 7 out of 10 completed. I couldn't avoid that, so I just took the damage. A little bit slower, but whatever. Better than being knocked down. Duck under that. It doesn't look like I ducked, it looks like I just decided not to get hit. So this is probably not optimal, but whatever. This next room, well, not this next room, but an upcoming room, there's something a little bit interesting that happens, besides just walking past enemies. Alright, so here's the room. So this is theoretically a, the lift needs to be activated, so you have to wait for a timer to complete, and there's teleporters, so the enemies, so you just have to wait out the enemies. But you can skip it by killing the enemies, for whatever reason. And this is also something pretty cool. This is maybe the coolest strat in the run. I use the explosion to land on my feet, which is kind of the opposite of how an explosion should work, but it's pretty cool. And I couldn't avoid that, I guess, so I just took it. Hey look, another chance to upgrade Assimilate that I didn't notice. And, hi Dan. Your life was not worth 15 seconds. Spoilers for the game, by the way. Skip the cutscene. So, the last two sectors of this game were the longest, although Sector 5 is pretty big as well. I fired that rocket off screen to get rid of the beast, the annoying enemy of the game. And you can't skip this overload, so I just revived once, whatever. I don't use it. Blowing up that wall stopped a Kamado assassin from appearing. Not that it really mattered, but whatever. So there's a bunch of terminals in this area that you have to press in order to open a pretty big door, a bulkhead, and a little bit later on in the sector I will go through these in the most optimal route. Not the safest though. Whatever. And maybe that actually helped. There's another annihilator, and I get lucky with what the elite right there decided to do, so I can just barely press that terminal. I'm gonna go up here and grab a shredder. So this is pretty much just a bunch of projectiles that I have to try to dodge. Or not dodge in that case, because it knocks me down right where I need to be. Get ammo when damaged is a lucky overload, because I will take damage, and I need ammo. Although I'm not actually sure I actually got any ammo out of that, but whatever. Onto the TAS bunker. I will not. I'm a pacifist, but I will not. They don't let me in. So that's actually not slower. That's 2 frames slower. That's actually not faster, I should say. But it does do damage. And her scream voice kind of distorts their voice line. So here I'm gonna grab the CFIS and crack myself the Velocithor, which I will use in the next sector. And it also lets me do a pretty cool super move in this boss fight. So this boss fight is broken up into 2 stages, 2 phases, whatever. This is Iosa, so Kamado Annihilator and Iosa. And she's annoying. So here's the super move. It's called Retribution, and it does a lot of damage. Not as much as I would have liked, but it's still some. Probably should have actually. Well, maybe not. Maybe it doesn't matter. This boss fight is pretty much done in a very similar way to the way you do it real time. Just jumping back and forth and trying to do damage. It actually doesn't matter how many of those laser sky things, I don't know, hit her. One does as much damage as all of them. For some reason. She's almost down to her last bit of health. So I try to use the optimal amount of NPFPs, which is all of them. The second stage of this fight is Iosa the Invincible, which, despite the name, is a much easier fight, just in general. I will walk through her, she doesn't seem to care. And then delete her existence. And then shoot her. And because I'm playing in windowed mode, some of the screen effects and transitions don't actually appear. So there was a fade-in that was supposed to happen that didn't. So there's 2 routes here. I can go up or down, and the faster way, if you have enough ammo, is to go bottom, but I needed to pick up that NPFB so I could do that. This is a long sector, but I will skip a good chunk of it, so it goes by pretty quickly. So there's 2 things that are going to happen here pretty quickly. I'm going to shoot at something off screen in 1 frame, and I will fall during that dialogue. So those are the only interesting things that happen in this sector. Yeah, except for the boss fight at the end. That checkpoint is useless because it just is. And I don't really need to preserve ammo on this weapon, so I can use it wherever I want. And I'm already out of ammo. I jumped there to manipulate Sky Smasher's AI for some reason. If I don't jump, it targets me. I don't understand how it works either. And the final mistake of this run, I kind of screw up that jump. And I don't remember why. I think I was in a rush. These things are easy enough to avoid. Can't skip that breathing, but I can jump out of it. And because this isn't complicated, I actually switched over to real-time mode and just walked through here. Alright, so another Namfield reboot to optimize my upgrades for the final boss. And I, at this point, learned a new trick for upgrading things. A little bit late to learn that, but whatever. I can nudge myself like 1 or 2 pixels at a time each time I upgrade. Get the resonance detonator there. The game, because I never cracked it, the game just gives it to me. It's nice, but I will need it. Skip the cutscene. That's not editing, that's actually skipping the cutscene. Framed perfectly, I think. Final boss. So the final boss is interesting. His name is Tor. And he's interesting because he works on a timer, and there's nothing you can do to speed that timer up, so all you can do is try to do as much damage as possible. There was one move, yeah, so those weapons right there, the fractal rockets, actually slow down his timer. So it's just a random chance when he uses them. So it's really hard to optimize that. It's possible, but I didn't. Right, so that's the cycle. Get in 5 MPFBs and 1 rocket. And it doesn't really matter how much damage I take. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then immediately switch to the resonance reflector. And reflect his charge balls back at him. Repeat. That jump there was pointless, I think. It was an accident, but I didn't correct it because it doesn't matter. So this task took me a while to do. I did it in most of it I did in about 2 weeks in December. And then I took a break right before this boss fight, actually. So I tasked this like 3 or 4 days ago as of recording this. So it's a lot fresher in my mind. But there's nothing complicated here. This is pretty much just wait him out. There is a faster strat, and it's get fractal rockets every time and do 6 MPFBs per wave. But that's very frustrating. And it's hard to manipulate RNG in this game, so I didn't do it. If I do another task, I might give it a shot, but whatever. And that's slightly slower, but it doesn't really matter, because the charge ball happens at the same time anyway. So I stand really close to him for this charge ball, trying to get within 441 right there, but he ticks up to 442, and I couldn't optimize that even more. So that's the game. That's time, by the way, 26:19. Pretty long cutscene here that I can't skip. But then there's a very long cutscene here that I totally can skip and do. There we go. There's the game, 26:19. Which beats world record in this category. 1.6 Non-Pacifist is the category, by the way. By 59 seconds. That's all. Thanks for watching, I guess.